Dear Father, I want you to consent to let me go to Lowell if you can. I think it would be much better for me than to stay about here. I could earn more to begin with than I could anywhere here. I am in need of clothes which I cannot get if I stay about here, and for that reason I want to go to Lowell. With these words, Mary Paul expressed the feelings of many of the women who left home to go to the Lowell mills. Although the mills exploited their workers, they were also the beginning of jobs that allowed women to support themselves. This is the story of those mills and women. The Lowell mills marked the change of the United States from being an agricultural society to being an industrial one, and began the Industrial Revolution in the United States. Before the early 1800s, the United States had little manufacturing and imported much of its goods from Europe. The War of 1812 started a demand for cotton mills in the United States. Francis Cabot Lowell, son of a prominent Boston family, saw his opportunity for a profitable investment. With the support of his family, he opened the Boston Manufacturing Company in 1813 on the shores of the Charles River in Waltham. But the sluggish waters of the Charles soon proved insufficient for the rapidly expanding company. So after Lowell's death in 1817, brother-in-law Patrick Tracy Jackson and investor Nathan Appleton began searching New England for a potential site. In 1821, they located a site in the tiny village of East Chelmsford on the powerful Merrimack River. By 1822, the Merrimack Manufacturing Company was established. The mill owners realized that by hiring young women to work in the new mills, they could overcome much of the opposition against them. The owners expected that mill work would not be a lifelong occupation for the girls whom they hoped to hire between maturity and marriage. The theory was that this rotating workforce would ensure consistent quality and decrease the likelihood of labor organization. It would also put to work the part of the population considered by many to be useless and a burden to society, and leave the men to do the farm work. In the early 1800s, not many job options were open to women. They could go into domestic service or take work in, such as sewing, washing, or hat making, or become a low-paid teacher. So many women jumped at the chance of a decently paying job, which also gave them an opportunity to become independent of the family. Their reasons for coming varied. One factory girl wrote that women flocked from all over New England. There were farmers' daughters who wanted city life, and women from wealthy families who wanted a cultured environment. Some were running from abusive husbands or had past histories. Some of the girls were earning money to send their brother through school or pay off the mortgage on the family farm. Others used the money for themselves or saved for their dowries. Most were earning money for the first time. However, families had to be convinced it was safe to send their daughters off to a strange town alone. So the mill owners established a strict moral code. One of the things that the companies did was to build boarding houses for the factory workers to live in. Residence in these buildings was mandatory, and early wages deducted about $1.50 off of a weekly wage of $3 for the cost of room and board. There were about 40 boarders in each house, up to 8 in a room, 2 to a bed. A matron took care of the cooking and cleaning of the house. She would usually have her own room on the ground floor. There were many attractions that drew women to Lowell. Calls, lectures, concerts, sewing, meetings, strolls, and books took up any free time the girls had. 2 newspapers written entirely by mill workers, the Lowell Offering and the Voice of Industry, were published. One girl said she came just for the famous libraries. But after 13 hours on their feet, All some workers wanted to do was sleep. The schedule was harsh and ruled by the bell. Work started as early as 5 a.m., with a 30-minute break for breakfast at 7 and another at 12:30. Work ending at 7:30 in the evening, with bells marking each event. Many women suffered from indigestion caused by wolfing down food in order to return to the mills on time. The time between these breaks was spent doing a variety of mill work, from cleaning cloth in rooms where there were, in the words of one worker, fogs and clouds, and not only fogs and clouds, but sometimes plentiful showers, to spinning and weaving, both of which required standing for long hours in noisy rooms with dangerous machinery. Some mills had as many as 6 stories, and as one factory girl told a worker, "You look weary, but never mind. There was an end to Jacob's ladder, so there is a termination to these stairs." In 1820, there was a population of 600 in the area that was to become Lowell. In 1826, Lowell was established as a village. By 1830, there were 5 mills and 6,477 people. And by 1845, there were 9 mills and a population of 30,000. The 1840s marked the end of the golden era of the Lowell mills. After the price of cotton cloth fell due to competing companies, especially in the South, owners sharply cut wages to avoid paying lower dividends on their shares. Production was speeded up, and operators were given more machines to work. The company also introduced a hated premium system in which overseers would benefit if their workers produced more cloth than was expected. Many of the New England farm girls felt that they were not properly respected, and after their strikes, petitions, and demands for higher wages and fewer hours proved useless, many left, leaving the owners scrambling for replacements. When they were still unable to find workers, many turned to a new class of laborers, immigrants. They could be paid less and could not complain about working conditions. Although never the Utopia many proclaimed them to be in the early years, the Lowell mills were both a triumph and a tragedy. In some ways, the Lowell mills represented a triumph. Many women had their first chance to leave home and earn money on their own. No longer were the women dependent on their families for money. Lowell also had many cultural benefits, such as libraries and lectures, that the girls would not be able to experience at home. A triumph. However, in many ways, the Lowell mills were a tragedy. The companies exploited the women because of their gender. They were not paid as much as men, and because their work was not considered physically demanding, they worked long hours. The mill conditions had worsened, and many women suffered from respiratory problems due to the lack of air and the airborne cotton fiber. Hundreds of oil lamps burned in a single room, and windows could not be opened. The deafening roar of machinery led to lifelong hearing problems. Another tragedy, the lack of safety precautions, led to many deaths, mostly due to being caught in the fast-moving machinery. Francis Cabot Lowell's vision had faded as the corporations grew greedy. A tragedy.